Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton, and today's episode we'll be discussing the Big Ten. Who are the top tier teams, sleeper teams, teams in trouble, impact players, and big games throughout the season. Now, once again, the top tier teams are the teams that I believe have the ability to make the college football playoffs. The sleeper teams are the teams I think that can surprise and maybe not necessarily, you know, make the playoffs, but they can make a lot more noise than the average fan is expecting. So, and again, we will not do out of conference games as big games. So, that being said, I think we'll start with the obvious, which is the top tier teams. We're looking at Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Ohio State is in the same vein as Georgia and Texas and Alabama, over the past, X amount of years from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day. It's just been a treasure trove of talent coming into Columbus. And with their recruiting as well as prowess in the transfer portal, they can match up with anybody in the country. Ryan Day is a proven winner. Again, you kind of have to erase the whole Michigan stuff over the past few years, but for the most part, he performs well in big games. And, people might point to the Ohio State game when they faced Georgia, people forgetting that Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't playing after the concussion, and they still took a really strong Georgia team to the brink of defeat. So this season, though, will be a test for him. And because you have a select few proven commodities. Yes, you got a lot of talent, but Jeremiah Smith on one side, on the offensive side, Caleb Downs on the defensive side are the true difference makers on these teams. And the most, I'll say it already because they're going to be on the list, the most impactful players just in the country. And you're breaking in a new offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly left for the Raiders. And you're breaking in a new defensive coordinator as well because Jim Knowles got poached by Penn State. So you got Brian Hartline, who ran the offense 2 years ago, and the results weren't as great as you wanted them to be. And Matt Patricia is taking over for Knowles at defensive coordinator. And again, this is a guy who has experience in the NFL, but what has he done in his resume that stood out in the past 5-10 years? It's good names. Brian Hartline, amazing recruiter, the best wide receiver recruiter in the country. Is that enough? Did he learn from Chip Kelly? Did he learn from watching over and seeing how to run an offense a little more efficiently? Again, the key here that you have to remember is you lost Howard, right? But you also lost Junkins and Henderson in the backfield. Is Julian Cyan, I probably butchered that name, former Alabama QB who transferred out as soon as Nick Saban retired. He won the starting job. Is he going to be the next productive Ohio State QB? Can Matt Patricia replace Jim Knowles? Again, with the talent advantage that they have over a lot of teams in the Big Ten, you still have to put Ohio State up there. I do think this will be a trying year. I do think as well that this is really a time for someone else to step up. Again, Ohio State didn't win it last year. Oregon won the Big Ten championship. However, we saw the results in the playoffs of who is clearly the better team last year. And this could be one of those Georgia type years where Ohio State turns in a quote unquote down year, it's just interesting to see how other teams will be able to capitalize. But if not, again, Ohio State has the talent to remain in the top tier of college football, not only just the Big Ten. Then we got Penn State, where all the stars seem to be aligned for them this year. Again, Ohio State has to replace a lot of impact players on both sides of the ball, trenches, impact positions like running back, QB, wide receiver, things like that. And Michigan's going to have a new QB, whether it's going to be the freshman Bryce Underwood. Same thing with Oregon. They're going to have a new QB. There's just a lot of unknowns in the Big Ten. And Penn State has a lot of knowns, a lot of proven commodities, as we said earlier, with Ohio State not having those. Again, you've got Drew Aller, you got the 2 running backs coming back, you got the 4 offensive line starters returning. You've got a lot of good pieces returning on the defensive line. You've got transfer wide receivers coming in. One of them was from Syracuse, who was one of the leading reception grabbers in the country. And again, you hire Jim Knowles to bring in a new edge to this defense. And this is a man who's led Oklahoma State to its best defense in 15 years, Duke to its best defense in over 60 years. That's 60, 6-0. And Ohio State to its best defense in 25 years. It's now or never for James Franklin. He's a leader of men who really has recruited well and has developed a lot of NFL talent in his tenure. And over the past 3 years, he's 34-2 as a favorite, 27-0 when favored by more than 6 points. But he's 0-6 as an underdog. This is the year where he has to start winning the big games, and the schedule plays out that way. You got Oregon at home, and you got Ohio State away. Other than that, you should have a talent advantage over everybody else. And God forbid they lose those 2 games. But even if you do lose those 2 games, I don't see how a 2-loss Penn State does not get in as one of the top teams in the top 12 team in the country. Unless those games are absolute blowouts, which I really don't see happening. And then there's Oregon. A schedule that currently only has 2 ranked teams on it will allow for a rebuilding year to go a little more smoothly than expected under Dan Lanning. Dante Moore, who was the number 3 prospect in 2023, will be the starter, but he's going to be working with an interesting wide receiver room. Evan Stewart is out for the year due to an injury. Oh, he might come back in like November or December, but in all likelihood, he's out for the year. And they just, I don't know if he was fully dismissed from the team, but they had suspended one of their younger wide receivers who was a 5-star in one of the previous recruiting classes. But it's clear that they're going to be leaning on the young talent that they have recruited. They do have some transfers coming in for veteran leadership, but I don't know how productive those guys are going to be, i.e. Malik Benson, the one who transferred from Alabama to Florida State and now from Florida State to Oregon. And it's really looking at Jeremiah McClain, redshirt freshman, and true freshman, DeCorian Moore, who was the number 1 wide receiver in 2025. Defense has a lot of returning talent, more specifically in their linebacker room. But overall, this will be a young team that the coaching staff will have to help grow and mature as the season progresses. And again, I think that's why the schedule is key, because that will allow for those things to happen. Dan Lanning is a good coach. You've seen how he's transformed this Oregon team in his image. He's tried to mimic what Kirby Smart has been doing in Georgia. And he had a good foundation there. You know, once Mario Cristobal left, They had strong O-line play. They've really done well with the transfer portal and NIL. So it's one of the powerhouses out there on the West Coast. So again, it's going to be a lot of new pieces. You're starting to see a trend with that as we continue with these season previews for these conferences. There's a lot of unknowns with a lot of these top tier teams. The reason why we consider them top tier teams is because of all the talent they've accumulated, developed, and or transferred in. The sleeper teams, I got Nebraska and USC. With Nebraska, a program in year 3 is magic under Matt Rule. It's historically, I mean, if you look back, year 1, he's has an overall record of 3-21. Year 2 is 13-12. You're already seeing the massive improvements there. In year 3, he's 21-7. This is in the past in Temple and Baylor. It's the year 3 magic. They brought in Dana Holgorsen, the former coach of West Virginia and the University of Houston, as the offensive coordinator at the end of the season, last few games. And now he has a full off season with Dylan Raiola and a young offense. The tough part about Nebraska is the trenches. We'll see if it can hold up, but if it does, Nebraska has a real shot at starting 7-1, heading into their November slate that starts off with USC. And again, once you go from there, it's very possible that you could see a 9-win season from Nebraska this year. If Dylan Raiola develops and he continues to develop, and he's a 5-star prospect previously. He was originally committed to Georgia, but NIL, and then his I don't know if his father or one of his family members works for Nebraska, and he wants to be the guy that brings Nebraska back to its glory days. There's a really likelihood, in combination with, historical precedent of Matt Rule being successful in year 3, Dylan Raiola having that development, Dana Holgorsen being a really bright mind when it comes to developing offenses and scheming his way to victory because he didn't have like those talent edges in West Virginia or the University of Houston. This could be a special year for the Cornhusker Nation that they haven't had in quite some time. And USC, it seems like a team that doesn't have a ton of hype, but a team that can really, again, surprise people, because that's kind of like USC's MO over the past few decades. They get the initial hype of the new coach and a solid season, and then things kind of peter out from there, and then all of a sudden they have another really good season. If D'Anton Lynn takes some more steps with his defense and Lincoln Riley produces another top 20 offense, this is going to be a really crucial year for them to, again, go not 10 wins or anything like that, but what you're really doing is setting yourself up for 2026 with that massive recruiting class that you have coming in, which is number 1 and or in the top 3 universally across all of the college football websites. Definitely, some have it 1, some have it 2, but universally regarded as a top tier recruiting class. And it's clear that Lincoln Riley knows he has job safety, job security, because they're not going to pay that buyout, Jimbo Fisher style. He's seen the changes that he needs to make. He put them in place last year. He's not going to have that flashy type of offense that he's had in the past with Caleb Williams and Baker Mayfield and Jalen Hurts and those high-powered offenses. It might not be to that level, but again, this is a man who is a proven innovator when it comes to offensive schemes, and he should be able to do that this year, regardless of who's under center. Teams in trouble, this is a pretty easy one. I've got Purdue And then Wisconsin, as we talked about previously, and with coaches that are probably in for a rough season. I had Luke Fickell on that list, but Purdue has Barry Odom in his first year, and this is a man who does a lot of good reclamation projects. He rebuilds a lot of places, and he rebuilt UNLV, a program that had one winning season in the past 20, 22 years, to a 9-win season and then an 11-win season. He's trying to build Purdue into what he believes will be a successful program. You had 50 plus players transfer out, and you had 54 transfers coming in. This will virtually be a brand new team. So again, if you just went 1-11, you got you should be able to double that win total because you have two cupcakes to start off the season, or what are viewed as cupcakes. So if they can find a win or two after that, before the calendar flips to November, where they run into Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Indiana, you should be able to consider it a successful season. Because last year you beat some team that you pay to lose 49 nothing in the first game, and then you ripped off 11 losses in a row. So again, I can easily see 2 wins for them, but if they don't get any more from there, like, how many transfers can you keep on coming in? It's just gonna be no matter what, it's gonna be a rough season for Purdue. So, it doesn't matter how many transfers you brought in, it's gonna take some time for Barry Odom to get things going over there. So, you gotta put them in the teams in trouble. And there's Wisconsin, where it's all about the schedule with them. You got matchups against Alabama, Michigan, Oregon, and Indiana on the road, and you got Ohio State and Illinois at home. It's going to be difficult to produce a winning season under year 3 of Luke Fickell with that schedule. I mean, you're not gonna be favored against Alabama, Michigan, Oregon, or Indiana, and Ohio State or Illinois. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games already. So, are you gonna go 6-0 in your other games? Probably not. So it's gonna be another losing season for Wisconsin. How will the Badger Nation feel about that? You made the move with Luke Fickell, to break away from that Paul Chryst, from that Brett Bielema type offense and structure of the team where you were tired of winning a division in the Big Ten and getting destroyed in the Big Ten championship game. And now you're having losing seasons left and right. For the most impactful players, we've got Drew Aller at QB for Penn State. Obviously, again, proven commodity. There's not many of those quarterbacks on the top tier teams across the country, even. I mean, you look at Drew Aller, Clay Kubnick, Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, those are the proven commodity. I mean, again, like we talked about Lenore Seller last episode, and he needs to take that next step. But Drew Aller needs to take that next step when it comes to big games. And again, you don't have that safety blanket at tight end. You still have those 2 running backs. You still have the offensive line. It's time for you to step up. You got Caleb Downs at safety, wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. We explained that. Again, those are 2 proven winners on both sides of the ball. Caleb Downs came from Alabama, went to Ohio State, helped them win the national championship. Same thing with Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith is one of the best wide receivers in the nation. He was probably the best wide receiver as a true freshman last year. I mean, this kid's going to be special as soon as he's able to leave. And Caleb Downs is going to be drafted in the first round as well. Dante Moore is going to be impactful because, again, there's a lot of talent in Oregon. Is he going to be the quarterback that makes a difference to take them to the next level? Dylan Gabriel was nice up until, you know, The limitations finally caught up to him. And then there's Dylan Riola at Nebraska. Again, he was brought in as the golden boy, the savior of the program. But the way the schedule plays out, you're going to need to do that. Most important games, I got Illinois versus Indiana, September 20th. This is kind of like in the same vein as LSU and Ole Miss, a battle of the preseason hype teams. Illinois was really strong last year, winning 10 games. Indiana surprised everybody, made it to the college football playoffs. Who's going to win the battle of expectations for this year? Oregon at Penn State, September 27th. Penn State's going to go in there with the three easiest games. I think it's Villanova, FIU, and Nevada. No real test. This is their first test. So you're going to have all the kinks worked out on defense, all the kinks worked out on offense for this matchup. And honestly, I don't like to be this exaggerated of like, oh, it's a must-win game. But James Franklin at home, this is going to be a whiteout game. This is going to be a prime time game to show the country what you're made of this year. Penn State at Ohio State, November 1st. And then Ohio State at Michigan, November 29th. And unfortunately, with the advent of the 12-team playoffs, you kind of saw the ramifications of losing the game, the big game, and how Ohio State still made and won the national championship. But for rivalry purposes, it's still an amazing game. And Ryan Day needs to beat them this year. You definitely shouldn't beat him last year. You should have beat him last year with the talent advantage that you had. And again, you should still have a talent advantage over them this year with them breaking in, and with in all likelihood is going to be a true freshman quarterback. So, Ryan Day, end the streak. At this point, with the national championship you won last year, you bought yourself some time. But even if you have a slightly down year, but you beat Michigan at this point, I think Buckeye Nation will take that. So, who do I think is going to win the Big Ten? Oh, I'm really going to say it. I think Penn State does it. I think James Franklin just finally pushes this team over the top. I think, like I said earlier, the stars align. There's too much talent coming back. You've got a returning offensive coordinator, a brand new defensive coordinator who has improved defenses everywhere he's gone. He's a highly sought after defensive minded coach. You took him away from one of your major rivals in Ohio State, therefore probably weaken them and strengthen yourself. I just can't see how they don't win the Big Ten with the talent that they have. I mean, you could see it because, again, this is historically a team that doesn't win the big games under James Franklin. This has got to be the year, right? That's what I'm thinking. So that's it for today's episode. We still have the ACC. We still have the Big 12. And then I'll probably put out a video of how I think the week 0 games are going to go in terms of predictions, I guess, money lines and whatnot. And we'll see how that goes. And then we still got to churn out some stuff next week for UM and FSU before the season starts. So it's getting there, folks. College football is right around the corner. And I'm really excited for this season. Again, as you'll see when we talk about the ACC and the Big 12, there's just a lot going on this season where you're confident in the teams who have recruited well over the past, but there's still a lot of question marks. And that just makes for a very exciting season coming up. In my opinion, that's how I think it's going to develop. So, that being said, you know where to find us. You already know the drill. YouTube, 305 Insights. Like, subscribe, turn those notifications on. Comment with any feedback you have. You got Apple Podcasts, do the same thing there. Rate us, follow us, subscribe, turn notifications on. Same thing on Spotify. Thank you for listening to today's episode, wherever you're listening from. We'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.